In a world where entertainment is viewed as mindless diversion, only good for momentary distraction, you are about to enter a new world, and you will never view entertainment in the same way again. This is Popcorn Theology.
Welcome, movie lovers, theology nerds, muggles, everyone else, to this very special Popcorn Theology series, where we are exploring the Harry Potter movies for where they align with the greatest story and our greatest storyteller. I'm Dementor David.
And I am Marcus Mooney. Ugh, scary, terrifying. But this time, hey, we're going to be discussing the third film, right? Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. So this was released in 2004 and directed by Alfonso Cuarón. In their third year at Hogwarts, Harry, Hermione, and Ron must delve into the mystery surrounding an escaped prisoner from the wizarding prison of Azkaban, who seems to be posing a dangerous threat to the young wizard.
Yes. And as we continue our way through, we'll just remind you that we are releasing these mini-sodes throughout the year of 2026 on each of the Harry Potter films. So check out the ones that we've already done. We did an intro and then the first two films, and check out the release schedule in the show notes for more. Or even better, consider supporting us on Patreon. And for just a couple bucks a month, you can vote on future episodes. You get exclusive access to social media groups, and you get access to this entire series right out the gate. They're all ready for you. Just go over to patreon.com/popcorntheology, and then you don't have to wait for future episodes. You don't have to have a time turner or anything like that. So there you go.
Yeah, that's right. And so we're going to drop the spoiler warning right now, since there's no spoiler-free section in these minisodes.
That's right. So let's get right to it. We have our rating system. First, we rate the film in terms of its quality. So Marcus, did you think that it was stale or fresh or buttered and salted, and why?
Ooh, this was definitely buttered and salted for me. I thought that it had a great story arc and fantastic twists, especially if you didn't know the books already. These are going to be good twists and turns in the story. The Dementors are straight up terrifying, especially for a PG-13 aimed at kind of your kids and tweens sort of thing. These horrible creatures, they're great. They're so well done, which then, in my mind, just makes Remus Lupin, Defense Against the Dark Arts Professor, one of the greatest characters of the series. I love that dude. Yes. And as you mentioned, we get time travel, always dicey, but they pull it off pretty well.
There you go. Oh man, you're absolutely right. The Lupin's the best. So Marcus got me into this series, and I was texting him periodically as I was reading it, and I was just like, "Oh, this guy, Lupin." And so, like, don't tell me any details. So we're just texting. So
right.
No risk of letting something slip, if you will. But yeah, I agree. Buttered and salted. This is probably my favorite book/movie of the series. Certainly up there. It's also where we begin to see the trend in these stories of really. There might be a slow crawl, right, to much of the story, but the very, very end, so much happens. And I guess you could argue like every story is like that. But I do think that with the Harry Potter books, it really starts to pick up pace doing that here. And so I love where they went with all of that. But we get Lupin throughout, and that's always wonderful. So, yeah, I would say,
yes,
and then, of
indeed.
course, Sirius, once we learn about him, once we learn the truth about him, once everything comes to light, just a remarkable character. Yeah, and also yay Latin, right? Because if you didn't know who was what, yay Latin, yay mythology, right. You get some clues there. Remus, right? Lupin, Lupus,
yep.
Mythical wolf, and then wolf. Sirius, mythical dog. I think a myth. I don't know. I know there's a constellation.
The dog star for Sirius.
There you go.
So it was great, right? We mentioned before that, all the spells are in Latin, but then like there's a whole bunch of names that all have important meanings. We mentioned Albus Dumbledore's, his name means white, so he's on that alchemical formula. Guess where Sirius is on this, right? Black, right? So that actually, if we understand the alchemy going on, that's going to tell you something about what is going to happen to Sirius in the future. And Remus Lupin, his main color is white, right? The white, light, pale moon, but it's not red. That's important. So yeah, back to the subtleties under through all of this. But we have definitely the best Defense Against Dark Arts teacher of the whole series.
Yeah.
As much as I did like Mad Eye Mooney, still Remus is the man. He's so good.
Yeah, and as much as I want to say things about Mooney, we can't yet. So we're trying to, we're spoiling only this movie as we go. But yes, buttered and salted all around. From many, I hear that this is a favorite for sure. But we also like to rate films based on how rich they are for biblical discussion. So when it comes to themes, how far you can go with this in terms of introducing the gospel to someone, or just further discussion. Would you say that it's diluted, not much to talk about, carbonated, quite a bit to talk about, or cup runneth over, just bursting, and we could spend hours here? So where would you put this?
Definitely going to be, I'm putting it in carbonated. There's some really good themes here, like rejecting prejudices and importantly, forgiving your enemies. So those are two like really good, solid themes, especially the latter when we think in terms of Christian theology.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Carbonated for sure. I wouldn't quite put it at cup runneth over, simply because it explores a couple themes, I think, pretty deeply, but it's not just bursting at the seams. We're not dealing with layer upon layer in this particular one. But one of the big themes that we see throughout is facing your fears, right? Not allowing fear to cripple you, literally to cripple you. And we see the imagery of light shining in the darkness, probably more palpably in this movie and in this book than any of the others in this series, and the darkness not comprehending it. So fantastic John 1 tie in there. So in terms of the main themes, right? Because these aren't being mini-sodes, we want to hit the high points, if you will, and then we'll kind of pick up whatever we didn't get to near the end. So what would you say are some of the main themes that this particular movie introduces and plays with?
Yeah, so I'm going to introduce the themes here in a different sort of way than we have in the past, and that is by focusing on the first scene with the Dursleys, because one of the things that really is going on in these books and these films is that the main themes of the movies are telegraphed right from the get-go. And there's a great example of this with Prisoner of Azkaban, right? It starts off with Harry literally inflating his Aunt Marge, who is already full of hot air, right? She's insulting Harry's father and mother, and he literally blows her up. So this signals that Prisoner of Azkaban is targeting prejudices for demolition, right? Because she's got all of these sorts of prejudices against her Harry's family. And these prejudices that we're going to see are mostly around those who are abnormal, right? If we think especially of Harry's Aunt Petunia, who can't stand anything that's unusual and abnormal. Well, we've got abnormalities in the wizarding world here in spades. We've got Remus Lupin, who's a werewolf. We've got Buckbeak, which is a hippogriff. And we got Sirius Black, who is both a criminal and an animagus, right? So we've got some very unusual types in here. Another signal that we're going to get from that first scene, and one that you and I as Americans don't easily pick up on, is Aunt Marge as a stand-in for Margaret Thatcher. That's Marge Thatcher, along with her bulldog, right, which is the national symbol of Britain. So we've got, the Brits pick up on this one right away. Us Americans were a little slow on the take because it's not, we're not calling the guy Ronnie with his eagle, right? It's different here. But because of this, the first scene also telegraphs that there's going to be a pretty dim view of the government here. J.K. Rowling did not like Margaret Thatcher and the Conservative Party at all. And so this is the first really good look we get at the Ministry of Magic in these books. And it's not a pretty picture, right? They're inept. They're unable to keep Sirius Black from escaping the Azkaban prison. They're dishonest and unwilling to own up to their own mistakes, right? They've got this campaign to try and say it's all fine, it's all good. But worse, they're willing to do a deal with the devil by using the truly evil Dementors as both the guards for Azkaban and later bring them to Hogwarts, right? So the ministry is a mess. The government is corrupt and bad. And this is actually telegraphed right there at the beginning with good old Aunt Marge and her bulldog. And importantly, also, this first scene is showing us that Harry is emotionally unstable, and he's quick to allow the anger in him to get the better of him, right? That's, he gets furious at Aunt Marge and just accidentally fires off and causes her to inflate, right? So overcoming his own anger issues and learning to forgive those who have done bad against him is going to be Harry's main alchemical task, right? The alchemy formula and the alchemical transformations. Overcoming his anger is going to be a main theme of the rest of the movie, right? The remainder of the movie is going to be moving the major characters like Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Remus and Sirius through overcoming their own prejudices. Even when the Ministry of Magic can't or won't, Harry has to overcome his own insecurities, and he does so in the Shrieking Shack. That's going to be important because it's the alchemical crucible of the story. This is where where he is purified, where he goes from the black to the white stage and into eventually the red. So Harry's going to become a more mature young man who can forgive Peter Pettigrew rather than take vengeance on him for betraying his parents, right? It is Harry who literally stands in front of Peter and says, "Don't kill him." And that's where you see him in complete opposition to where he was at the beginning of the book. And Harry is able to save others, including his own other self, through the power of the Father, right? He thinks it's the Father, but as you said, with light overcoming darkness. So like these are the three, I would say, for me, the big themes that I pick up from this is that we've got, prejudices that have to be overcome. The government is corrupt, and anger has got, Harry's anger has got to be overcome as the main kind of work of the movie.
Yeah. And he's, I really appreciated the tie-in. And for those who haven't, definitely go back and check out our previous episodes where Marcus elaborates on the alchemy formula throughout these stories. To be completely honest, I was irritated anytime we had to spend time with the Dursleys in the books. I thought, why do we always have to start at the Dursleys and make our way back to the Dursleys? Why does every book have to span one academic year? I thought that was a weakness in terms of the writing. I thought that was just like, it's just, I've started it this way. I want to continue it this way. But I'm sure there are much better reasons than a muggle like me would understand. But I never considered that the Dursleys would be a key element of, like you said, that hero's journey that he goes throughout each book. Because otherwise, a hero's journey for the same character over and over again doesn't make a ton of sense. But it does make sense if during each story he's undergoing a different leg of his journey during each book. And so I think that really illuminates a lot of why we go back to the Dursleys each time. And then, of course, also there's a plot element to it that's revealed later. But in any case, I never considered that there was telegraphing in those earlier scenes. And so
in every single one of them, that's what's going on. And the reason we have to return back to the Dursleys is because in that hero's journey that you mentioned, is the hero's journey starts at home and is got to end at home as well, with the hero transformed, right? So thinking back to previous times when Harry has come back to the home, right? Hagrid, he says, basically he says, tell your horrible cousin that if he does anything bad, you're going to use magic against him. And Harry says, but I'm not allowed to use magic. And he's like, but Dudley doesn't know that. Right. And right. So Harry comes back and he's literally empowered. We don't see that in the movie. Right. And we get a little bit of that discussion, or kind of left for us in the books, but you have to come back home again for the hero's story to be completed. And you have to come home transformed. This is what happened to, Odysseus, basically. I mean, he was kind of the journey back home, but all these types of hero stories that start at some home have to end there, in the, with growth in the character and change in the character. So, so anybody who wants to go back and watch these movies or wants to read these books, definitely recommend doing that. The first scene with the Dursleys is going to set up what is really going on here.
That's awesome. I never considered that. Definitely going to review it in light of that for sure. And I think as well that I'm glad you mentioned the government aspect of this, because the Ministry of Magic angle, I can't help but wonder, have they ever been competent at anything? And it seems that the answer is not really, unless you count Arthur Weasley, right? He seems to be pretty good at doing his relatively menial job at the ministry. But yeah, that's definitely a key theme, is that there's all sorts of corruption throughout. And yeah, that theme of forgiveness. I mean, really that is, I would say, the most powerful aspect of this story, is that he goes from wanting to kill Sirius, right? Wanting to take him out, to not only being willing to forgive Sirius, but being willing to forgive the one who's actually responsible for what Sirius was accused of doing. I mean, yeah, just incredible. And through all of this, we see that he is being led by a man who is tremendously virtuous, who is a father figure for him, a man who knew his biological father, and who is then later revealed to be much more than meets the eye. And so with Lupin, there's always there's always stuff to talk about. Now seems like a good time to head to the lightning round, though, which is where we're going to do a semi-quick round of reject, receive, redeem, where we're going to see what themes we can reject from a biblical worldview and which ones we can receive, or perhaps redeem or tweak in such a way that we see that they actually do align with Scripture with some modifications. Nothing jumps out to me as a reject point from this one. Even that opening scene, it's like, I guess we should reject, harming your family for being mean, but he wasn't exactly in control of it. So I guess, but
right.
I don't know. Does anything jump out to you as a reject point from Azkaban?
Not really. And going back to our first episode where we kind of set up this whole series, a part of that is because Rowling is really trying to walk the reader through virtuous behavior and real Christian virtues ultimately on these things. So these movies are going to really resonate in a lot of places, and it's going to be really tough if you are kind of taking an orthodox view of Christianity to find thematic elements, at least, that are going to be at loggerheads with that, because they're really not. There might be some differences that you might have on kind of political perspectives or other sort of maybe broadly social aspects that Rowling might have that, you kind of think are going on, but those tend to be minor compared to the main themes. They're offshoots over here. So yeah, you might like the Conservative Party in Britain. If so, fine, more power to you. Rowling doesn't, but she's just going to use that as a way to point to, the ineptitude and corruption that's in the government. I don't find much to argue with there.
Well, I was going to say,
I don't care who's in. It's kind of ugly.
Well, I was going to say, and not even knowing about the sort of telegraphing with Margaret Thatcher, I don't see anything particularly conservative about the Ministry for Magic. It doesn't strike me as like a political statement, aside from the Margaret Thatcher nod there. But
the only thing they seem to be conserving is kind of their own rear hides, right? Just trying to cover their butt.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't seem particularly conservative, but I guess one could argue that, how conservative is the Conservative Party in England? And that's where safely across the pond here, I can have whatever opinions I want. It's not like it affects us, at least not directly. So, but yeah, I agree. And to clarify something about the reject point, sorry, briefly. It's easy for people to look at a story like this and say like, oh, here's all these things to reject. I like to clarify though, that if the story lauds something that we should reject, then that's what I would put in this category. If the story condemns something that we should also condemn, then I would say that's something we should receive or redeem. So there's plenty of people doing awful things in these stories, but it's always seen as evil. And we actually have a fascinating world that is built where evil is a name that you can use to describe things, right? We can actually call a spade, right? You know, it's not just bad or misunderstood. It's there's good and there is evil. There is light and there is darkness, and contrasted so beautifully in this book and movie. So that actually brings me to some of the receive or redeem points that came to mind. It seems that fear was a really key theme or element to this whole movie and book. I mean, is that something that jumped out at you?
Oh yeah, I think you're totally on board with that. It starts off, especially with the first training session that Lupin has with the class, right? And we've got the boggarts, and the boggarts will take on the form of what you fear the most, and how laughter, right, and mockery of evil, right? Not mockery of things just for the sake of mocking, not mockery out of vindictiveness or evil, but laughter, right, as joy, as a source of the way to defeat fear was amazing. And, you know, seeing poor Alan Rickman have to be dressed up like Neville's grandmother was delightful. And of course, being the consummate actor that he is, right, he is playing Snape so well, so confused at what he's at. And we get to see Neville catch a win on this one, right?
Yeah.
You know, you and I will keep throwing little darts towards Neville, like, hey, by the way, you know, remember this guy, he's important. Yep. So Neville's, Neville catches a big win and a huge confidence boost because he has been able to overcome fear. It's one of his first, not his first step, because the first step is in the first movie, but it's a good big step for him to show that he can be a competent wizard.
Yeah. Absolutely. And overcoming fear. I mean, because really that is sort of the, I guess, caricature in a sense with Neville, at least that stands out to me. Him and Ron to a lesser degree is that they are at times crippled by fear. But what's interesting is to see Harry crippled by fear. And that to me is a real standout point, because unlike everyone else who do find the Dementors terrifying, Harry is overpowered by them. He passes out. And that's a source of embarrassment for him, right? Why is it that the Dementors affect him so much more than they affect anyone else? And my memory of the book and the explanation for that is simply because what they are revealing to him is just so terrible. Do you recall some more specifics on that? Because he's revisiting his parents' death over and over and over again whenever they're around.
Yeah, he hears the scream of his mother when she's killed, right? And he's like 2 years old in the crib or what have you. So yeah, the Dementors have incredible power over him because of the massive trauma that he experienced. And so, somebody who has had that, it's, I think in one sense, as we're talking about it here, it feels like, wow, what an amazing kind of sympathy that we build towards someone who has had so much trauma in this way. Is that not only do you have to face that, but when you do, it's like reliving it all over again. It's a good way in which Rowling brings us to empathize so much with Harry on that. And yeah, it bothers him a lot. And Lupin, basically puts his arm around him and says, this is why, and it's okay. And I'm going to help you through it. But those Dementors are, in the book, Lupin describes them as the foulest of all things in the world, right? I mean, Harry is facing the nastiest stuff, and it's no surprise then that we see them featured so strongly, especially also in the seventh book, right? They show up a lot because they're in the Ministry of Magic, they're part of the assault on Hogwarts, etc.
Yeah,
Dementors really are, like, next to Voldemort, these are the worst things out there. And so for Harry to be able to overcome them in this book represents a full alchemical transformation that he has gone not only in each of the books through, the black, the white, the red phase, but we've now gone through 3 books. And at the end of 3 books, I mean, how powerful of a wizard is Harry at this point? He's actually pretty dang strong. He can create a visible corporeal Patronus. And everybody's impressed by this because even full adult wizards struggle with this sort of thing. So if we look at the first three books actually as an alchemical journey in and of themselves, we have reached a pinnacle point for Harry in this book. And that'll be important because what we'll be bringing up in future episodes is actually how this whole series of 7 books and 8 movies actually is like a biblical chiasm, where 1, 2, and 3, then we reach a hinge on 4, and then 1, 2, and 3 are mirrored by, well, like 5, 6, and 7. And so you're going to see a lot of parallels in the way things operate according to these books and these movies.
Man, and that makes so much sense, even just in terms of taste and preference, because the chiasm parallel, that's fascinating, because with 3 and 5 are easily my 2 favorites. I'm like, okay. I can't wait to...
And Sirius is a major character in both of those, right? A defining character in both of those. So yeah, we're going to see characters. We're going to see story arcs. We're going to see, I think that's a great thing, that just even intuitively you like those 2. And I do too. I would say those are 2 of my favorites as well, plus 7.
And I would say that 2 and 6 also paired my least favorites. And
that would make sense.
That also follows. And again, that,
And again, going with what we said in the previous episode of 2, that these, not only do we have this chiasm, but also the odd number ones tend to be on Harry's individual transformations, and the even number ones tend to involve larger societal issues, bigger topics that are external to Harry. So there's also a bit of a preference as to what we're looking for in the books, probably.
Yeah, makes sense. And so there's so much in this one. I mean, like in terms of just the popcorn side, I mean, we get this incredible scene where, Snape shows up, and there's that kind of battle between these, what we later really discover are high school rivals, right? I mean, they're all back together there. And then we see the transformation where Remus turns into a werewolf. And I think that there's something really powerful about that. I'm always intrigued when a story has a character who is not in full control of themselves. I mean, for example, we mentioned Gollum in a previous episode, Gollum and Smeagol, where there's a bifurcation, sort of a schism in their personhood. Bruce Banner and the Incredible Hulk is another good example. Green Goblin and Harry Osborn, at least in the Spider-Man film, I think it's a little different in the comics. But werewolves are another kind of perpetual illustration of that, because of course they don't want to be werewolves. It's not like being an animagus. Lupin is a kind, gentle man who is nothing at all like the killer that he transforms into once a month. And we see this dual nature, right, of the old man and the new man, or the flesh versus the spiritual man. And we even see nods to that in how Sirius tries to kind of talk him down in a way. I'm not exactly sure how effective, like if there had been some approach that he was hearkening back to, but he says to him, the man you truly are, Remus. This heart is where you truly live. This heart here, the flesh is only flesh. That's just a quick moment during this werewolf transformation in this movie. Like, it's just almost a throwaway line. He's just like, hey, calm down, don't do it. Of course, he has no control over it, and he's trying to call his friend back to who he truly is. And I just can't help but remember how Scripture points out our relationship to that old man who we once were. And in this case, the old man is the sinful flesh, right? The one who is unredeemed. Romans 6 verse 6, we know that our old self was crucified with him in order that the body of sin might be brought to nothing, so that we could no longer be enslaved to sin. And Colossians 3 speaks to this as well, talks about putting to death what is earthly within you. Verse 6, on account of these, the wrath of God is coming. And in these you once walked when you were living in them, but now you must put them all away. Anger, wrath, malice, slander, obscene talk from your mouth. Do not lie to one another, seeing that you have put off the old self with its practices and have put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge after the image of its creator. Basically, we need to, as Christians, live in a way that's consistent with who we actually are as children of God, rather than falling back into those old practices. And so whenever we see characters, at least they stand out to me. Marcus, I'm sure you could probably think of other examples as well of characters that that have that dual nature and that bifurcation. It's always compelling to me, and werewolves are a really key illustration of that.
It's fascinating that you bring that up, because we have another character in the books, in the movies, in this whole series, in this Harry Potter world, who suffers from a similar kind of problem. That is Harry himself. Right? Harry is a person who, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but that's okay. Everybody, it's Harry Potter, right? But Harry, in book 5, thinking again of the symmetries over here, Harry is going to have incredible difficulty controlling Voldemort and his communication connection that he has with him through the scar, right? Yeah. And Aquaman's isn't going to work, like all this, it's going to break down very, very badly, in the same way that Lupin cannot control himself at the end, right? He's been aided by Snape. Of all people, Snape has been the one who has been brewing the potions to keep his furry problem at bay over the course of the year. And yes, Lupin does go away once a month, but on the other hand, Snape is such a skilled potions master. He is such a skilled apothecary that he can actually make a draught that helps to minimize this effect. And Snape hates Lupin, right? He does it anyway, because Dumbledore told him to. But at the same time, it's an interesting view into Snape, because in this movie and in this book, we also get, we get a sense of just how much Snape absolutely hates James and Sirius and Lupin, although we get the sense that Lupin was probably the better of the three, of them, as far as the way that, he might have treated people. Lupin's just a nicer guy. But James and Sirius were jerks. We're going to learn more about just how bad of a jerk that they were later. But still, Snape surprises us consistently, despite being a slimy jerk of a guy who hates people for what seems to be no reason. He's got reasons, but they're still bad, right? He hates Harry because he's James's kid, and that's wrong, right? We resonate with the wrongness of that. We notice that that's wrong. And thinking of what you had said before, what do we redeem? We redeem that because Rowling is putting this up as this kind of hatred is just wrong. You shouldn't just hate people because you hated their parents, right? Yeah. He's not the same person, and Snape can't get past that. But even in all of that, Snape still lends his aid, his skills and his abilities, and gets himself in a lot of trouble as well for being a jerk, right? It's his fault that a bunch of this stuff ends up happening. But getting back to your observation about these characters that have dual natures, Harry is going to be in the next set of movies, right? In the second half of this giant saga, he is the one who has to deal the most with an alternate person. He is the one who's going to have to kill the sin that lives within him. He is going to have to die to that sin. I won't say more now, but that scar, that connection that he has to Voldemort, gives us a double person in Harry as well. In Looking for God in Harry Potter, John Granger talks a lot about doppelgangers because we've got a bunch of them. People that are mirror images or similar to one another, and how they have connections. And certainly Harry and Voldemort are some of those doppelgangers in that they have a weird connection to each other. They can't, Voldemort can't touch him. Why not? All these mysteries about the way that they interact and the way that they can't. We also have all these triads. We mentioned those with Harry, Hermione, and Ron, right? Harry's got to stand in the middle and understand and make the right decisions, listening to sulfur on the one end and Quicksilver, Mercury on the other. We see other triads. We see James and Sirius and Remus as a triad. We see Dumbledore, Minerva, McGonagall, and Snape as a triad. We see Voldemort and Lucius Malfoy and Beatrix Lestrange as a triad as well. So not only do we have in opposition to Harry, we've got Malfoy and Crabbe and Goyle. And one level above him was also, Yeah,
Yeah.
but they do. They're, not
Sure.
that they're idiots, but
Yeah.
but it's still,
Yeah.
those are the oppositions that we see. And so as we look at doppelgangers, we can look across not only at the one triad, but actually that's just one level. And we've got generational triads that move out from there. As we look at these. So really neat things to consider as we move forward into these movies, because we're coming up on, number 4, and number 4 is the center of all of this. And it really is. It's not just that these are 7 books by accident. Rowling is doing something on purpose here, as we're discovering. She's doing everything on purpose.
And that's, I assume, why she couldn't be strong-armed into writing more books. Right? They've continued the films, but there's no more books. I've looked. There's a play that I don't even know if she had a hand in. I assume she had to give some sort of rights for them to do it. But in any case, I think, I'm excited for more of that for sure. I think the one note I want to end on here is one of the probably more obvious ones, but it's also just I think my favorite illustration of this point is that, we have the whole time travel aspect, and he goes back and Harry expects his father to show up and save him. But of course his father's gone, but there's magic. Maybe there's some way, and he's hopeful for that. But it turns out that what actually needs to happen in order to save himself and to save his surrogate father, his godfather, is for him to step up. And we see at this point that, we get this incredible image, I think, of 1 John 4, verses 18 and 19, right? He's been facing his fear this whole year, right? He's been learning how to control, basically how to fight back against the boggarts and the Dementors. And 1 John 4:18, for there's no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment. And whoever fears has not been protected in love. We love because he first loved us. And so we see that repeated theme of love, but we also see that fear is cast out by love. And then, of course, the imagery for that is sort of foreshadowed, if you will, by Dumbledore. He says, but happiness can be found even in the darkest of times when one only remembers to turn on the light. And of course, John chapter 1 tells us who the light is, right? In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him. Without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it, or did not comprehend it. In that scene where he's, expecto patronum, just casting out all of that fear, casting out all of that wickedness. It just gives me chills thinking about it. Also, gotta love Latin, right? The connection there, right? Patronum for father. I guess expecting the father, right? I assume is probably expecting the father.
Basically, the coming of the father.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's not actually so subtle, is it? Right?
No. Yeah.
And it's of course he has the same Patronus as his father does. It's a stag.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what the stag in medieval history was symbolic of?
I'm going to go ahead and guess Christ.
Yeah, it's a Christ. Sure enough. And so, and
speaking of Lewis, it's a white stag. Just throwing that out there. C.S. Lewis is a white stag in Narnia. Yeah.
An interesting nod there, right? Because it's also the white stag that leads the Pevensies back to the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And back to their real world where they are effectively now believers, right? And that sort of thing. So there's all sorts of neat little motifs going on here. And the fact that the Patronus is white in color also tells you about its purity, right? That alchemical formula stuff going on still again. So there we go. Lots of things to consider, but at the same time, I think we're probably done for the movie. Yeah. But so. if those watching us here have enjoyed it, but if you felt like you missed something, then flip your time turner over just once, and you can watch us all again. Now, after that, you can join us next time for Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Oof, what an interesting one. So check out the release schedule in the show notes, and don't forget to support Popcorn Theology on Patreon to get access to how many of the episodes right now, David?
All of them. The ones you missed.
All of them.
You've already got them. But then all the future ones as well. Exactly. Wow. So
You don't need a time turner. You can like skip to the future right now.
Exactly. The future is now. Welcome, everyone. All right. Well, we're looking forward to seeing you guys whenever we see you. And until next time, keep engaging films, books, and magic from a godly worldview. And remember that you are not a mindless consumer. Thanks for watching this episode of Popcorn Theology. For more content, subscribe on YouTube. Follow and interact on social media to help broaden the conversation. Check out our archive of past episodes at popcorntheology.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. And consider becoming a patron saint by supporting us on Patreon, which lets you interact, influence, and enjoy exclusive bonus content.